world when you have a session after lunch, but we try to make it very engaging and entertaining so that none of you doze off here. It's a very interesting topic. The title is Sustained Disruption. I know we've been talking a lot about disruption and AI today. Here we're going to look at nurturing growth in a responsible way. I'm sorry I have to use paper today because my iPad crashed, so I have to go back to old school, but I'm very thrilled that I did have some paper and I could print my stuff out. So, all good stuff. As Jessica mentioned, I'm Chitra Rajeshwari. I'm responsible for social development at Avasant. I head the foundation. I'm the executive director, and my responsibility there is youth employment globally. I'm also responsible for the digital public infrastructure and sustainability at Avasant from the for-profit side of the business. So it's very exciting times, and I really enjoy what I do because there is so much of cross-pollination between both verticals that I am responsible for. I want to take this opportunity to introduce our esteemed panelists. We have Anish Sethi, for left, of course, she's the Chief Data Solutions Center at UNICC. I'll ask Anish to say a few words about what he does there. And then Tembi, she is the Global Chief Data Officer who's sitting to my left at Arup. And then we have Cynthia, McKenzie, and she's the CEO for STEM Advantage. So would you mind just introducing yourself quickly?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, yes, this is that time. My kids often do, when they know that a new iPhone release is out, they often kind of tell me it's broke. So I think iPad just got launched today. So it's a good time. So, sorry. Again, my name is Anish. I am the Chief Data Solutions Officer for UN. And again, UNICC was formed almost 50 years back as a platform solution provider within the UN agencies. Almost 50 years back, the member states that found us had that vision that we could benefit from having a common IT service provider within the UN space to help almost all UN agencies share and build on their mission. I mean, their mission, as you would know very formally, is between health, peace, world issues, and policies around that. So we hope those organizations deliver on their technology promise.
Cindy McKenzie. So I was a CIO until a few months ago. I just recently retired. So the majority of my career was in media and entertainment, Fox and Deluxe. And then my last CIO gig, which I will use for today, it's a great example, was at Curaleaf, which is the largest global cannabis company in the world. Talk about something regulation you've never seen before. Cannabis is state by state. So right now I have helped found a nonprofit 12 years ago today called STEM Advantage. So since I retired a few months ago, all my time goes to that. So I'm working for free.
Hommes is my name, and my voice usually doesn't sound like this, but my allergies are overdrive, so bear with me next time we speak if my voice sounds different. I'm Arup's Global Chief Data Officer. For folks that don't know Arup, I like to tell people about our flagship project. So if you've ever looked at a picture of the Sydney Opera House, we did the engineering on the sails. If you've ever driven over or seen a picture of the Hong Kong Macau Bridge, which is the longest bridge in water, we did the structural engineering. Okay, are we okay there?
Special effects.
Special effects. If you are in the US and you have driven in, or you've taken a BOT in San Francisco, the current extension right now, we are working on the tunneling. I like to say Arup is involved in really large, interesting, really complex solutions in the engineering, architecture, and design space. And we are truists and alchemists in terms of designing for a more sustainable world. So the founder of Arup really believes in making sure that our designs don't add to the greenhouse gas emissions or additional carbon footprint. And even we made a commitment that we publish the carbon footprint of all our designs
disruption is both a catalyst for growth and of course it's a challenge towards responsible practices. So what I would like to focus on is to explore some of these delicate balances that we need to have between innovation and responsibility as we explore businesses and see how we can navigate disruption without compromising ethical, social and environmental consideration. So I want to look at, I want us to talk about balancing growth and responsibility when it comes to organizations and their sustainable growth. What are the strategies that they can foster? I want to look at resilience amid disruption. So this whole conference is a lot, we're talking about disruption, but it is good disruption for growth. So how do businesses adapt to unforeseen disruptions while adjusting and maintaining their long-term growth and viability? What roles does resilience play, right? And then I also want to look at, maybe we can discuss a little bit based on how much time we have. Definitely we want to look at equity and inclusion, which is a must in any industry, and how it benefits the key stakeholders. And then what are the actionable steps that organizations can take? So let me start with a question, and all of you can respond to it. Just have a conversation. Just let's have a good, fun banter here. So, looking at disruption and sustainability, how can disruptive technologies drive sustainable growth? So let's look at it more from an enterprise perspective, and then of course, Anish would like to hear from you from the UN perspective. Maybe Tembi, you want to get started?
Sure. When I think about what we do as a company, and I think about the way we leverage disruptive technologies, including generative AI, we're training a lot of models at the moment. Yes, I know it's very expensive. But one of the things we landed at when it comes to Gen AI, note I'm specifically putting out Gen AI, is there's quite a contradiction with the leveraging disruptive technologies in how we run our businesses, how we manufacture, how we create products with carbon footprint. The more energy we use, the more disruptive technologies we need and we come up with, the more energy we need. So if I think about, for example, training a Gen AI model, the amount of energy that's required, if I look at some of the things that I just explained that we've designed, we use machine learning, right, to come up with the solutions for these complex engineering problems. But if we really want to leverage Gen AI to really help us in solutioning or designing really complex infrastructure, the amount of energy, we're going to have to start to talk about high performance computing. We have to start talking about quantum computing. That consumes a lot of energy. So there's kind of like a contradiction there, right, in terms of leveraging innovative technologies and the sustainability of this technology.
For us, I think every company has to deal with disruptive technology, right? To stay current and to stay viable, you have to be looking at every new technology that comes in and how it affects you, right? And can it improve your business? But I think it's all around harnessing it to meet your business goals, right? It isn't having it to have it. I can honestly say, Gen AI was on nowhere on my list, right? For what we did, it just wasn't what we did. But there were a lot of technologies that we were deploying around. So Canvas is farms, retail, and manufacturing. And in most states, you have to do all three in the same state, and you can't transport anything across lines. And so where we saw some of the biggest benefit was in agriculture growth. And we were deploying sensors, and we had done this in a number of locations, and we were trying to validate that it actually was accurate across locations. But it was working where we did sensors to do water, heat, all the pieces of grow. And we were doing it to come up with the best model for grow. And again, we're talking cannabis, so potency is really, really important. Believe it or not, the more potent, the more you can sell it, the less potent, the less you can sell it. And so we were trying to look at what was that mix that gave us the product that we want, but it also, from a sustainability standpoint, so it reduces costs and improves the product, right? But in terms of that, it reduces costs and improves, agricultural processes. We were using it. The other thing he's wrong with, and again, it has to do with grow versus companies, we were doing demand planning using AI. So we were pulling all of our sale data from all of our locations, we were pulling all of our competitor data in, and then trying to model what would sell where. And then based on that, it would actually develop a grow plan for the farms to develop that. So, and you know, that the third one we were doing was around sentiment analysis, where we had built company feedback loops for our customers, and then reading social media on our company, pulling that into looking for either good trends in comments or risks or whatever. And all three of those were working out pretty well with us. And you know, my way for dealing with disruptive technology, and I worked in media, specifically around post-production before this job, and it was, talk about disruptive, it was the whole move from actual film to digital. That was very disruptive, right? And to me, I like to balance that long-term strategy around a bunch of innovation projects that are smaller, right? So you might have a big innovation initiative, but I also really like piloting, where you're doing small tests that are very focused, everybody agrees how they're getting measured, and then we can make decisions, and the business can make decisions about how much is this worth investing in right now. And that combo of long-term strategy and these pilots that were very structured was always kind of the secret sauce for us. So.
I mean, like I said, as a central digital partner for the almost 90 plus UN agencies, we do get a mezzanine view of how technology is impacting world issues and how the various UN agencies are driving it. So, I mean, one thing is for sure, disruptive technologies have a role for almost the entire universe to take it. But the key is to be able to take it in a way that it supports sustainable growth, and that is the most important aspect that UN can value from, or if I were to leave a UN message back for the rest of the world, that UN would like disruptive technologies to be able to contribute towards sustainable growth. Again, not many, probably, I would like to think that everyone is aware of sustainability agenda for the UN. It's called the 2030 agenda. It's the Sustainable Development Goals that we are halfway through. But again, as pandemic would have it, the goals are nowhere it needed to be. They were doing fine before the pandemic, but obviously we are behind that right now. And I do believe the disruptive technologies, the digital power of disruptive technologies had a way to fast forward the sustainable development goals. And I think right from Gen AI, we heard about this in the keynote from Kevin this morning about Gen AI's impact on supporting these sustainable development goals. I would like to be a part of it, making that prediction come true, because I certainly believe that there is a lot of power and potential in disruptive technologies to support. We in the UN, apart from Sustainable Development Goals agenda, had a framework of how corporations could use disruptive technologies to support the Sustainable Development Goals. I call it the CPR for digital cooperation. It is, if you look up for digital, Secretary General's digital cooperation, you will find a lot of blueprint for that. I call it the CPR. It's like connectivity, the C, and P is privacy. You want to make sure that the disruptive technology, the impact of that is connected to the rest of the world. From a P point of view, we want to make sure that it is inclusive from a point of view of security and privacy, and that's the P. And the R is in making sure that its reach is allowing us for everyone to be taken from a point of view of human rights and inclusivity. And that's what is important for us to see in making sure whether it's the Gen AI, whether it's the blockchain, whether it's the next IoT, all of them would help the SDGs and the world agenda world becoming a better place. But I think the frameworks that we need to look at it from a sustainability point of view is important. for definitions, in 1987, UN actually defined sustainability. And it has a very interesting definition for sustainability, and that was the key to the Sustainable Development Goals. It is like how we want the world to be left for the next generation to be able to live is what sustainability is. And again, there are many connotations between the corporate social responsibilities, the ESGs and sustainability, but I think for us the sustainability agenda could be driven absolutely by disruptive technologies. There are tremendous examples, and we've heard a few from the panel itself.
Right. So talking about example, that's a good point. Debbie, can you give us some examples of companies, since you talked about mega projects that have successfully balanced innovation with environmental and social responsibility?
So, I don't know if folks have heard of the term greenwashing.
Yes.
Right? The challenge that most companies and organizations are facing is how do they actually assess their carbon footprint, their greenhouse gas footprint for their ESG reporting. And for those with European presence, that is actually going to be mandatory by 2025, that we start, I think Q heads noted, by 2025, that we start some level of ESG reporting. And what that means is there is what's called scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. We'll be technical for 30 seconds, right? Scope 1 is essentially saying this is the footprint that you're directly responsible for, right? Your vehicles, your buildings, etc., things that you own. Scope 2 is essentially saying this is the energy that you're using for your operations. Scope 3 is essentially saying this is now your value chain, your supply chain for all your Gen AI stuff that you're doing, your AI stuff that you're doing, your technology organization. That is incredibly difficult to track. So the reason I'm excited at the moment is we're starting to see some of our partners and clients start to look at disruptive technologies. Cloud, I don't think we should be calling it disruptive anymore. It's not business as usual, right? But the availability of hyperscalers, the availability of integration platforms as a service, iPaaS, the availability of really advanced analytical capabilities that allows you to move, acquire, store, process data and scale is now actually helping some of the ESG agenda in the sense that you can now start to look at your suppliers and partners and have those conversations around, can we connect so that we can actually start to see what our footprint is. I'll give you an example, we just launched our first Arup greenhouse gas emission dashboard. It's not pretty, because we didn't realize how much we were traveling. And we had a number of us use Concur or whatever other applications we use. We had to go through our procurement systems. We had to connect with our travel agents and get all that information using a hyperscaler, and they're starting to do really advanced analytics to see what our own carbon footprint is. Another example, if I look at data centers, so we work with a number, actually two of the hyperscalers in designing their data centers. If you think about the amount of energy that is emitted and the amount of heat that is emitted by a data center, because everybody is doing some Gen AI stuff, we've really started to work with them to model how they can have more sustainable data centers. And part of it is just the availability of, like I said, their own technologies, which allows us to really analyze. For example, we can now do satellite view of sites to see where we can actually put a data center that makes sense. We can now do hazard assessment around weather, wind, earthquakes, etc., to assess the most optimal place to put a data center. And then we also have large-scale capability to run energy models that then say, hey, if you move the dial this way or that, what is the energy consumption for this data center? So there's so many ways to start thinking about as an organization. Where can you focus? Scope 1 is in your control. Scope 2 is kind of in your control as the energy consumed. Scope 3 is the most complicated, and unfortunately we're quite way behind when it comes to proposal.
So, we're talking about stakeholders and examples, but what matters is also equity and inclusion. And this morning when the four of us were talking at breakfast, I think Anish, you mentioned that, people talk about developed nations. The majority of the world is either underdeveloped or developing. So where do you see How do you see equity and inclusion happening from a country perspective for them to be able to grow and be part of this whole, these new terminologies that we use, the disrupted world or the digital economy and using generative AI, how can they grow and be part of it?
So again, that's absolutely right. Thank you. Again, going back to the scale of the problem that we're facing with the Sustainable Development Goals and where, and out of 195 countries in the world, at about $8 billion by 2024 statistics, almost about 150 by IMF's own record of, I think, April 2024, are still termed as developing nations. That takes care of about 80% of the world population. That is still termed as developing nations. I do believe that, again, whether it's a sustainability agenda, whether it's an equitable sustainability agenda, we do have to look at certain frameworks, certain equitable growth frameworks that can support organizations, and certainly organizations that are building models using the next-gen technology platforms to be able to not just support, but should support in the right way so that where the support needs to be, that impact is happening. We call it halfway through the 2030 agenda. It's only because it's 15 years was the time frame given for 2030 agenda. We are actually halfway through the 2030 agenda. There is a lot to catch up. And last September, UN along with ITU and the development organization launched the SDG Digital. That is our way of saying that disruptive technologies and digital can drive the equitable future that we are talking about here.
Cindy, maybe you can touch a little bit about how can organizations achieve these sustainable growth, but without compromising ethical standards.
Okay, so I think part of it is a company, right? So you're talking global, right? I'm not, but I think every company has a responsibility to have their goals, right? And, if you look at the UN goals, they go from poverty to social equity to planetary and climate control, right? It's the spectrum of everything that we should be improving, right? And so, companies have to decide what are their goals and then make sure that the projects and the initiatives that they're doing meet those, right? And that you're not doing one that's for revenue at the expense of your social and equity goals. So at Purely, when I was there in the US, a lot of Canvas initiatives are around positively impacting the communities that were hurt by Canvas and around helping people who were incarcerated. And so we had, as well as some of the sustainability goals we had in there climate-wise, we had a very strong social equity goals within the company. And we had to measure how we were doing those, and we had initiatives that looked at that. So whether it was training, whether it was jobs, whether it was something as simple as communication. One of the, I think, most powerful campaigns that we did was interviewing people with PTSD, people with high anxiety, people with epilepsy, who were positively impacted their conditions, and then turning that into a story to destigmatize usage, right? So I think my view is, I think companies have an obligation to look at these things in their whole structure, but if you don't make it clear that that's what you're doing and you don't report against it and measure against it, it isn't real. And so part of what we did and what I believe every company has to do is to really clearly define those goals and then measure against them. And if you look at companies like Microsoft, for example, they do very strong reporting against what they said their sustainability goals and where they actually are against those. And I think everybody has to do that.
So we have about 3 minutes to go. Let's talk about the planet's health. How do we nurture innovation while safeguarding our planet? I want each of you to take a turn. And go Tembi.
So I would say it's really about two things. The first one, I think I already mentioned. How do we keep an eye on the impact of innovation, the negative impact? Because innovation means that we consume a lot of energy. It means that in some cases, you just mentioned that 80% of the world is still considered developing. So those folks may not have access to a computer. Those folks may not have access to technologies that actually allow them to generate solutions that are specific for their country or for their region. And so that inequality starts to really grow. Because the folks with the computers, the internet connection, the resources to actually grow really fast, leave behind the folks without. So there's that part. And then thirdly, it's really to keep an eye on what's the mission of your company. So I mentioned our mission is to shape a better world. We don't work with all companies, right? And so that's a decision we made as a company to say, whatever technology we leverage, whatever projects come our way, this is what it means for us to be sustainable. So I think it's really thinking about, I mentioned earlier, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Where do you want to focus? Where you can make a difference? And then if it's a mission for you even better, where can you influence your partners, your value chain, your suppliers? Can you ask the questions around what they're doing to make sure that they're also on mission with what you're trying to do? There are quite a number of good examples of companies that really ask the suppliers the questions, the hard question on their supply chain. And they want to see the evidence of it. So that's something that we could do in terms of being ethical and making sure that we don't increase the inequality.
So, I mean, for me, I have to, I don't know if it's just faith, but I think technology is the only thing that's going to save some of the issues that we have coming forward right now, right? All the technology that is being invested in carbon removal, water reclamation, right? You know, I really, when I look at companies like Microsoft, you know, or Google or whoever donating, you know, not only are they doing their own projects, but they're actually donating pretty significantly. I think it was $840 million for the tech companies for carbon removal, right? And those companies are not going to be profitable right off. And having, you know, people who are big companies who can afford to donate money to progress those technologies, I think in some ways is my only hope.
And what is the UN perspective?
I just very simple, put purpose.
Correct.
Put purpose in the core of your mission. That is the most important thing for anyone to say for being successful in your business. But if you were to put the purpose from a point of view of equitable growth and sustainable development goals, you will find the answers. And we just did that 30-second answer.
And I agree with all three of you that technology will play a very, very, very important role in balancing the equity that is so needed, the inclusion that is absolutely a necessity, and helping these developing nations and organizations that are yet to catch up, bring them to the forefront very quickly, because we all have to be on the same page and we have to speak the same language. So I think there's a lot of work to do, but this is a start, and I think we've made a lot of progress over the years. I've had this panel, you know, on sustainability over the years, and I see that there's so much of change that's happened and the growth that's happened. So it's all positive. So the takeaway is, let's protect our planet, and let's keep in mind equity and inclusion, which is very important for all. Let's give a big round of applause to our state.